Hello everyone, this is OddMcbump coming at you with a Star Wars questionnaire of sorts. Now the purpose of me making this video is to try to give my newer audiences a kind of look at who I am as a person and decide whether they want to subscribe or not. And it also just for fun. I'm a big Star Wars fan and I really enjoy the series and all the little intricacies that is within the EU and all that jazz. Without further ado, let's begin. First question, Jedi or Sith? I personally believe that I would make it the best as a Jedi rather than a Sith. Although this isn't a really clear-cut answer because I do believe that some Sith teachings have merit. I'm not talking about the Sith Code in particularly, but I do believe that the dark side of the Force is a tool that can be used for the greater good. Another point solidifying my choice to the light side of Jedi would be that of I would probably reach my potential a lot easier, or I would have a higher chance of reaching my full potential in the Force, as opposed to being brought up as a Sith. Now, Sith training is hard no matter who's your teacher or who is your master. And at the end of the day, I probably would become a stronger Sith than I would be a Jedi if trained by the Sith, but my chances of reaching my potential are very, very slim to none. I would probably be labeled as a Grey Jedi for my exceptions of Sith powers and Sith Force abilities, while retaining my allegiance to the Jedi Order. This would probably hinder me from ever achieving the title of Master, but knowing my own limitations and knowing who I am as a person, I think I would have far more fun going around the galaxy and helping out people than sitting on a council chair discussing trivial matters. Next question. Favorite planet? My favorite planet in the Star Wars universe is Dantooine. I enjoy Dantooine because it is the site of a Jedi enclave where a lot of first-time pupils and a lot of young pupils who are learning the ways of the Force are first trained. In my opinion, it is better to train a Force-sensitive who is new to the Force at an isolated place like Dantooine. Dantooine is very serene, it's very isolated, it's out of the way. Not a lot of Sith, think about attacking this place. And when they do attack, it's usually met with a lot of Jedi lightsaber blades. This place is a very, very safe place for all who are looking to learn at a younger age, while not being probably young enough to be considered a youngling, more like the age of, say, Anakin Skywalker when he was first picked up. This place offers great training. It has a lot of history behind it, and it's kind of what I'm used to. I'm used to living in a country kind of area, and I'm used to being separated from a lot of people, going off on my own, walking around the grasslands, and I can see myself being at most at peace with this kind of setting. Next question. Lightsaber, lightsaber color, and lightsaber fighting form. My lightsaber type would be that of a standard hilt, that is, being of the standard length and a two-handed grip. The color would be green because I see myself as being more of a Jedi Consular than I do a Jedi Guardian or a Sentinel. I would also have an orange short Shoto saber whenever the situation called for more offensive tactics than my regular defense. My shorter Shoto saber would also come in handy when dealing with enemies that use finesse. The reason my standard blade has a two-handed grip is not just that I can deliver power attacks, but also be able to take them with the extra leverage. If an opponent used a form like Makashi that relies more on good blade work and weighting down your opponent, it wouldn't be very helpful to have a power defense type defensive setup rather than a Shoto in one hand or regular in another hand, and being able to block attacks from different angles. My primary fighting style would be that of Form 3, Surisu. Surisu started out as an expansion from the first form Shi-Cho blast deflection training, but later evolved into the perfect and ultimate expression of defense. Jedi code and my own Jedi ideals of pacifism and only using violence as a final resort would coincide well with this defensive posturing and defensive tactics of Surisu. However, I understand that defense isn't always the best way to go about things. While I can get away from a certain situation and leave my opponent unscathed and get out of a really bad scrape, I might not always be able to do that. Running away might not always be an option. To compensate for my lack of offensive tactics, I would make my supplementary form for Form 3 my next form, Form 4. Form 4 is called Ataru, and it's called the aggression form for a reason. It relies on aggressive acrobatic movements and kinetic energy to be able to take down its opponents. It was made to combat tactics like Makashi, where its defenses couldn't keep up with the kinetic force. But just like the defense of Surisu was made to combat Makashi, it takes its tactics flip side. It is pure offense, and that's its biggest downside, is its defense and lack of endurance. Because of this, Surisu and Atara go hand in hand very well. So, applying it to a Surisu specialist like myself would be extremely great in combat. Now, I would also pick up from other styles and aspects of other styles, such as Makashi's blade work for my Ataru onslaughts, and Shien for my aim blast deflection. Tactic in combat would be to walk in, open up with Surisu, and try to either reason with or turn my opponent to the light side or stop fighting altogether. Now, this isn't always going to be an option, so if they refused or I knew this wasn't going to happen, I would be able to talk to them a little bit and get them to kind of be distracted in combat. While they're talking, I would pick away at their weaknesses, see chinks in their armor, be able to pick out their weak spots. And once their weak spots have been shown, then Ataru would be flipped on and Surisu flipped off, and an onslaught would go forth. I would try to end the conflict very quickly, and for that reason, if that didn't work, I would jump right back into Surisu and try to get out of there. At that point, I would seek the tactical high ground and rely on my force abilities to either overpower or get away from my opponent. Another type of fighting that I would be interested in studying is something called Terazkaze. Terazkaze was invented to combat force sensitives. The reason it was so widely used is because not only did it rely on hand-to-hand combat or hand-to-blade, it also had tactics to protect the mind. Now, finding someone to teach me in this form of fighting would be another instance altogether, because why would you teach someone a combat tactic used to beat them? I don't know. But hopefully I could find a teacher, because not only would it help my force wall to be able to defend from mental attacks, but it would add on to my unarmed combat that I would also get from Ataru training. Favorite species? Humans. They're the easiest to identify with. Although a very close second non-human race is Maraluka. But some of you might say that they're human enough to be called humans. What? They're the easiest to identify with. Moving on. Favorite vehicle? Land speeder. There's not really a reason behind this one. I just kind of like the way it looks. Who would be my Jedi Master? Now, I thought this one over for a while, and it came down to two distinct Jedi Masters. And who I finally ended up deciding on was Obi-Wan Kenobi. I like his attitude. I like how he approaches situations. He's very negotiable, which I believe in the Star Wars universe I would grow to like. He is the reigning master of Surisu, which can't be that bad if that's going to be my main form. He wouldn't be that bad of a teacher, I don't think. His supplementary form is Ataru, just like my own, helping me even further. And overall, I think out of all the Jedi, I would probably get along with him the best. Or at least as best as getting along can be. If I was a Sith, who would I choose as my master? Well, if we're going to talk about from any of the EU, I would end up picking Darth Traya. Darth Traya, unlike most Sith Lords, isn't a Sith Lord who tries to make her apprentice just like her. She's one who looks at all of their strengths and weaknesses and evaluates them. Life as a Sith isn't going to be easy no matter who you pick as your master, because they will push you to the absolute limit, and if you die, you were just too weak. She reminds me a little bit of Darth Bane on how he always took his pupil seriously. So I believe she would take me seriously enough to trust me, but she's called Darth Traya for a reason. I probably wouldn't trust her as far as I could throw her. You know, without the Force-enhanced strength or anything. Lastly, for being so different from myself as a philosopher and as a combatant and as just a thinker in general, we share very, very similar views on the Force. I view the Force as nothing more than a tool to get the job done. Whether it's light side or dark side really doesn't matter. It's two parts to the same whole, and we need the entire whole to be able to get the job done. If I was a Sith, what would my Sith Lord name be? My Sith Lord name would be Darth Akinatos. Akinatos is the Greek word for immovable. My Sarisu mastery, coupled with my endurance training, coupled also with a use in Tuta Menace if I could figure out how to use it. Tuta Menace, by the way, is the ability to reflect or redirect or catch sometimes energy-based attacks, sometimes even lightsabers. All that coupled with the way I fight would make me somewhat of an immovable object. I would be used as a distraction rather than the main focus, much like Vader was used in Episode 5, when he was distracting Luke from the real problem. Next question. What is my favorite episode? My favorite episode is Episode 6, obviously, from the picture you see before you, as opposed to Minnie's favorite episode, Episode 5. Now, I like 4 and 5. They're very good setups. They're very good action-packed, except 4 was kind of not all that great when it came to action department, but it was okay because there was good characters. 5 was okay on the action department, great on the characters. But at the same time, I kind of just had this gloomy feeling the entire thing, like everything went wrong, and I know that's the point of the film, but it feels like there's no hope. You know, Episode 4 was a new hope, and now our hope died because Luke just got his hand chopped off and Han's been taken away. So, you see how I look at this stuff. And when we get to Episode 6, that's when we actually see Luke finally become a Jedi. He finally starts using the Force reliably. He, takes on the big freaking Rancor and takes on Jabba the Hutt. And then later, Boba Fett, who was this awesome bounty hunter guy. We see a coming of age. We finally see the result of all the hard work Luke's been putting in his training. And later, we see this fight toward the very end, between Vader and Luke, and all the emotion that was put into that scene. It was phenomenal when I first saw it, and it still makes the film for me. Least favorite film. Well, what do you think? In all honesty, this film had great action scenes and great idea and concepts, but at the end of the day, the executions of those ideas and concepts really, really aren't well thought out or done correctly. This movie could have been a great classic if it would have had maybe 1 or 2 more rewrites or someone to help along Lucas and, say, look, man, these ideas work, these ideas don't. We like the lightsabers, we don't like the political talk. Run it like this. This could have had a chance to be something perfect. The trilogy the prequels had a chance to be perfect, and it ruined itself. And to be completely honest, Episode 1 doesn't even need to exist. You can skip it and just jump straight into Episode 2, and you won't miss a beat. If I could write a Star Wars novel, what would it be about? Now, an obvious answer would be about my character and me in the Star Wars universe. However, I think it's not really overdone, and it's still a valid answer. I think the timeline which I picture myself living in, which would be the Clone Wars, has been way too overdone, and new areas of Star Wars need to be explored. Thusly, I thought it took a long while and thought about it, and I'm not really a Star Wars historian. I'm not the biggest guy when it comes to the EU, but I would like to write deeper into the first Force users. What was their culture like? Did they have a code? How different was their code from our code, the Jedi code now? What was their relation to the Sith? How did the Sith learn how to use the Force? On and on and on and on and on. I would like to look at how did people look at the Force at the very beginning? Did they look at it like magic? Did they look at it like spirituality? Did they look at it like a tool? There's so much culture behind this, and we don't really take time to look at it, and I think it really should have the chance to be looked at. Which film, in my opinion, has the greatest soundtrack? Now, believe it or not, this actually came down to my most favorite Star Wars film and my least favorite Star Wars film. Now, Phantom Menace, for all of its flaws, had terrific music. The Duel of Fates, still today, is one of my favorite tracks, and it has so much emotion and energy and time put into it. However, there is one track that beats it, and that is the final fight track between Vader and Luke. The emotion, the anger, the drive, the frustration, all of it's there. All of it's present. You could practically feel Luke's rage as he lets out that yell and the score begins. His rage against Vader for threatening his sister, his fear for his sister's life, his fear for his own life, fear for the galaxy, anger for for Vader falling to the dark side, anger for him to turning on the Jedi. It's all there. It's all valid. It's all tangible. And that's why I like it so much. It makes you feel the weight of the moment. Do I collect figs? No. I'm going to group the next two questions together because their answers are really similar. What is my favorite thing about the EU, and what is my least favorite thing about the EU? My favorite thing about the EU is how expansive it is, how many subject matters are delved into, how we can get into the psyche of, say, Boba Fett, and we have no clue who this guy is, and all of a sudden we know everything about him, or we have little to no idea of Vader's true power, and now we know his true power, or we find out what happened between episodes 4 and 5, or we find out more about ancient Jedi when it comes to Revan's time or the Exiles' time. We can learn so much and learn about characters that we wouldn't have otherwise even paid attention to. And the worst part is exactly that. There's just so much to the EU. Someone who's like me, who has to watch everything chronologically, really doesn't know where to start. Final question. What is Star Wars to me? Star Wars to me is a way of looking at life. It is a way of looking at the self, and more of the self than life. With the mastery of the light side of the Force is the mastery of light side emotions, lighter emotions. With the mastery of the dark becomes mastery of the darker emotions, the emotions we're more ashamed of but can't deny that they're there. At the end of the day, to master yourself, you must master both the light and the dark side of yourself. That's going to be it for today. This questionnaire was really hard to make, but it was really fun to make at the same time. So if you liked please leave me a like, a comment, tell me what you liked. If you didn't like this, then you dislike, comment, tell me what you didn't like. And if you really feel lucky, hit that share, hit that subscribe. It really helps me out, guys. It gets me to keep making videos like this. And if you're brave enough to travel to the comment section, you know, the desert that place is, leave me a reply. I want to see what some of you guys would put down as your answers to some of these. If you want to answer all of the questions, go right ahead. And more than likely, I'll answer back or reply or talk to you, because I don't really have much to do. Until next time, I'm OddMcbump, signing off.